I will be reading from Mark 9, verses 2 through 10, if you'd like to follow along. And he said to them, I will tell you the truth. Some of you who are standing here will not taste death before they will see the kingdom of the God come with power. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and a voice came from the cloud. This is my son whom I love. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant.
Well, when things don't happen the way you expect them. I don't know about you, but I've been really enjoying following Andrew and Peter. They seem relatable, and I think they're relatable because they get frustrated. They have real emotions about this whole thing that's going on. Now, granted, they're probably caricatures of Peter and Andrew, but they feel real and they feel relatable. And so I appreciate Ted and company for presenting them in that way. It's interesting to think about how they're reacting and responding to what's going on as they're with Jesus. And so we hear them over and over again. In some ways they sound like broken record, right? Where they're complaining about how frustrating it is and how confusing it is. Why doesn't Jesus just say it straight? They can't tell anybody about these amazing things that are happening. They're always on the move. Jesus' teaching is difficult. He keeps talking in those really confusing parables. Parables, thank you. So why do they stay? Why do they stay with Jesus? He's remarkable. He has a glow. They are in awe of Jesus. And you can feel that. Unfortunately, I think awe is something that we miss in this culture, in this day and age. I think we are really steeped in a culture that is extremely practical. And so therefore, we've turned faith and the Bible into something that's extremely practical. We don't really have patience for mystery. So we've turned our faith and we've turned the Bible into a how-to guide. So there are countless books, there are countless sermons that are essentially how to be happy, how to be righteous, how to get to heaven, how to find truth, how to succeed, how to reform the government, how to determine the exact date and time when Jesus is going to return, how to start a revolution. We've turned the Bible, we've turned our faith into a vending machine faith, something that we can approach so that we can get something out of it in very practical, down-to-earth ways. Now, at its core, I don't think that understanding is wrong in the sense that the good news is that God came to earth. the divine took on human flesh and blood because of God's deep love for us and for all creation. So therefore, God has meaning for us. The meaning of salvation, the meaning of abundant life is something tangible, is something that we can experience here and now and into the future. So there is extremely practical way of understanding who God is to us. The problem is when we overemphasize the practical, the day-to-day, it becomes more and more and more about us. We end up seeing God in terms of that vending machine, how God can help us. So our prayers become so much less an encounter with the divine as they are a laundry list of the things that we need or the things that we're grateful for. It's about us, it's about things. So this story from Mark 2, recounted in the other synoptic gospels, is our reminder. The transfiguration is the reminder that God is not contained by our particular understandings of God and what makes sense to us. The scriptures include the how-to guides, but ultimately they're not about God revealing the how-to booklet. The scriptures are about God revealing God's very self. That's what our stories are about. God revealing God's very self to us. And God's very self is remarkable and awe-inspiring and mysterious. I love Peter's reaction. When he is encountering the divine, encountering something beautiful, encountering something that should leave us speechless, he blurts out some ridiculousness about making a tent for the 3 people that are there. Woven, you guys sounded amazing. Would it be all right if we got some sleeping bags and pillows and set them up here on the stage? Then you'd have a place to sleep. Would that be okay? Right? And the writer Mark is writing this down with this comedic scene in mind, saying, Peter had no idea what he was saying. Right? Mark is laughing as he's writing this down because there is nothing that should be said, but we try to make sense of it. We try to help understand what's going on and fill it with words that ultimately won't make any sense of it. But this is God's revelation of God's self. So think through these other moments in which people encounter God's glory. Moses sees a bush that's on fire but is not being burned up. That doesn't make sense to our minds. And yet it's a holy place where Moses has to take off his sandals because it's God's very presence in a bush that's on fire that's not being burned up. We get an image of the city of God in Isaiah 60 that's echoed in Revelation 21 and 22, this moment when heaven and earth are joined as one and the city of God is rebuilt and God is in his holy place and all people are with him. And we get the description of this gigantic city with huge walls, an extra fortified city for God to dwell in. And the gate to the city is never shut. Wait, what? Why would you build this extra strong, extra powerful, super high walled city to keep out foreigners and invaders and then keep the gate open at all times? And then in Isaiah 60, it actually says, the foreigners come to the city. They come streaming to the city. That doesn't make sense. A big fortified city with a gate that never closes? We have an image right over here on our window of a lion and a lamb laying down together. An image of what the kingdom of God is like. And it makes no sense to anybody who knows anything about nature. And yet it's gorgeous. There's something beautiful and completely nonsensical about it. And yet it's the revelation of what God's kingdom is like. It's the revelation of what God's kingdom will be. And then we have an image right here of an electric chair, of a hangman's noose, of a lethal injection. And that is our symbol of life. The image of state death, state-sponsored death, and the death penalty is our image of life. When Jesus is revealed as king, he is revealed being nailed to that. And that's the mystery that there are no adequate words for. The image in Revelation of the one who takes the throne is a lamb who has been sacrificed. That's how God reveals what God's kingship is like. A baby lamb that has been killed, and that is the one who takes the throne. It is frustrating and mysterious because it does not make sense to us. And yet, it is imagery that God projects that reveals God's beauty and glory. And so we've tried to make sense of all of these. We have lots of theological explanations for how that works and how that works, but they always fall short. And it's okay, we try to make sense of things, right? I remember when these paintings went up under the cross, and lots of people, including my daughter, said, well, what do those mean? That's a fair question. But does it really matter? Because of their inherent beauty, do we need to explain them to death and talk them to death? Or can we simply enjoy them? And there's the tragedy of the last 10 minutes of me talking. Is I feel a little bit like Peter. Because I've been trying with my words to explain to you the mystery and the glory of God. And yet we have this imagery all around us to reveal that to us. And we have each other all around us to remind us of that mystery and beauty and glory. So therefore, there are times to just be quiet.